Good evening, everyone. I hope all of you are well. Okay, so this is a question. You're going to ask the user to input 10 values and you will only sum the positive values. And then you will output the average, the sum, and the count of positive values. So again, as I always say, we'll first try to trace some values, dummy values. So we know how the program will exactly behave. And then only then we will write the code. So इस तरह से आप you can always draw these tables on the paper. Blank pages आपको given होते हैं multiple. So ask the user to input 10 values. So that means you will run the loop 10 times. And then we have to only sum the positive values. So we initially start with a sum and a positive counter, and then we have a loop that runs 10 times. So when I input 4, it should add 4 to the sum, and then it should increment the positive count by 1. If I input 0, it shouldn't do anything. If I input 10, it should do the same thing again. If I do -4, again it shouldn't do anything, right? So it will only do the processing for the positive values. Okay, so in this question, what you have to do is you're going to ask the user to input 5 values, and you'll only sum the values that are in the range of 20 to 50. That's very simple. And then you have to only get the numbers that start with the digit 3. So in case of 2, 1, you'll ignore this. 3, 3 would be considered. 1, 5 would be ignored. Then 3 would also be considered. 3, 9 would also be considered. So any number that starts with 3 between 20 to 50 would be considered. Okay, इसके लिए मैं आपको एक hint दे देता हूँ because it's not that obvious. So whenever you get such a question, you have to use the div function. Okay, so what does div do? आप अगर देखो, div returns you the quotient, right? So when I say div of 10 by 2, this basically gets me 5. और इसमें, so if you have any number, let's say you have 33, और अगर आप इसको 10 से div करोगे, so you end up essentially getting the first digit. ठीक है ना? So I know this is kind of like the major part of the program, but again, अगर आप लोगों को कोई इसका idea नहीं है, तो you should know this. This is sometimes very beneficial when you're solving a question like this. Again, let's say if you have a number 450, so you divide by 10 and you get 4. So this always ends up giving you the first digit if you divide it by 10. And similarly, when when some question asks you that you have to get the last digit, for that you can always use the mod. So 33 by 10, अगर आप इसका रिमाइंडर निकालोगे तो इसका रिमाइंडर 3 आएगा, which is essentially the last digit. Similarly, अगर आप 450 का 10 से मॉडल्स करोगे तो you get 0 as the remainder, which is also the last digit. So this is how you actually use these. So div with 10 gets you the first digit, and then mod with 10 gets you last digit. So आप इनमें जितने zeros ऐड करते जाओगे उतनी places शिफ्ट होते जाएंगे. तो अगर आप इसको 100 से डिवाइड कर रहे हो तो you'll get a different digit. अगर आप इसको div को 100 से करो, 1000 से करो, every time आपकी जो places है of the digit will keep on shifting. ठीक? So I've given a very major hint of the question. Rest I will assume that आप लोग easily कर सकते हो because अब और इसमें कुछ भी खास नहीं है ऐसा. So we do this, then one more question, and then we start and finish while loops today. Okay, now maximum and minimum. So we'll just do the logic correctly, quickly. So maximum and minimum में क्या होता है? ये questions आपको होता है ये arrays के अंदर भी ये repeat होंगे. So if you understand the logic here correctly, तो फिर आपको arrays में इतना time मिलेगा. So you're going to ask user to input 5 numbers and output the maximum and the minimum values. All right. So maximum and minimum calculate कैसे करेंगे? So imagine you have a couple of numbers. So you have 10, you input 3, you input 90, you input 5, and then you input -7. Now you can clearly see that max is 90 and min is -7. But how did your brain decide this? And the way your brain did is exactly what you will be doing in pseudocode and program code. So आपने initially assume कर लिया. So when I had inputted only 10, so you assumed that 10 would be the largest value, and it would also be simultaneously the smallest value. Okay. Then I input 3. So then your brain is checking, okay, 3 is smaller than 10. So 3 becomes the new minimum. So 3 becomes the new minimum. Then I input 90. So then you're comparing 90 with the previous max, which was 10. And now 90 is the new max. Then I input 5. So 5 is not larger than 90 and 5 is not smaller than 3. So nothing happens, and then I have -7. So since -7 is smaller than the previous minimum, so -7 becomes the new minimum like this. So इस तरह से बिल्कुल ये लॉजिक को हमने pseudocode में कन्वर्ट कर देना. That's literally it. So it's not a difficult question by any means. So we run a loop from 1 to 5. Okay. So initially हमें ये assume करना है कि max और min जो है वो आपके first number के equal है. The reason we do that is we don't have a range. Okay, ये मैंने comment out किया, this is not part of the question. So let's say somebody assumes कि ये बहुत common mistake होती है कि initially max और min 0 assume कर लेते हैं. Or what if I input negative temperatures? Let's say I'm taking a data set of Antarctica और वहाँ पे सारे temperatures आपके -10 से लेके let's say -50 तक है. So because of this wrong assumption of 0 being the default number, अब आपकी जो smallest value, जो largest value है वो 0 ही रहेगी. It will never update to let's say -10. So this is a wrong assumption. Okay, we never set this to 0 until and unless the range is given to us. So the safest thing you can do is you can just run a loop, और जो भी loop की first iteration है आप उसके अंदर ही जो आपकी value है उसको आप max पे set कर दो और उसी value को आप min पे set कर दो. Then every time the loop runs, so you input a value and then you compare it with the previous max. If the current value is greater than the previous max, then it becomes the new max. And same happens with the minimum value. So assign num to min. अगर आपकी जो current number की जो value, if it is less than the previous minimum value, then it becomes the new minimum value. And again, you have to use the assignment operator not equal because this is not a comparison. This is just a simple value being assigned. और आपने loop close करना है और उसके बाद आपके जो है ये output आ जाए. Okay, let's start conditional loops. Okay, so conditional loops are different from iterative loops. So iterative loop में हमने बात किया था कि we already know that how many times the loop is going to run. So it runs for a fixed number of times. Like I will play FIFA for 2 hours, I will jog for 3 kilometers, I will read for 1 hour, etc. So in case of a conditional loop, now the number of iterations are unknown. So now you'll say, I'll play FIFA until I'm sleepy. I'll watch movies until I'm tired. I'll stop studying once I am, let's say, stressed, etc. Okay, so यहाँ पे आपके पास अब conditional loop है, you don't know when they're going to end. And where do we use conditional loops and what are their types? So there are 2 types of conditional loops. By the way, you should know their definitions. ये exactly exam में इसी तरीके से वो पूछते हैं. And then a lot of times students are not able to recall the definitions because they assume कि इसके सिर्फ programming आएगी. So everything that you're doing in P2, you have to kind of know their definition and the basic working as well. Some time ago there was a question about mod and div as well. I think ये 2025 में आया, if I recall correctly. और उसमें ये पूछा हुआ था कि mod क्या करता है, div क्या करता है, and give samples for both of them. And you guys would not believe कि almost 90% of the students got that question wrong. क्योंकि उनको mod पता था कि काम क्या करता है, but they did not know how to write down the definition. And the same thing applied for their application. So you have the precondition loop, then you have the postcondition loop. So precondition में you're checking the condition in the start, post में you're checking condition at the end. And the difference between them is कि pre में code might not execute at all because the condition will not run, and post condition में the loop will always run at least once, so the code will be executed because the condition is checked at the end. And you must remember that conditional loops do not ये काउंटर होता है ना ऑटोमेटिकली, जो नेक्स्ट आई आप करते तो आई अगली वैल्यू पे चला जाता है. वी डोंट हैव देम, सो यू हैव टू मैन्युअली इंक्रीमेंट द और डिक्रीमेंट द लूप वेरिएबल्स. So these are the 2 loops that you guys might remember already. और इनका बेसिक सा सिंटैक्स है कि while the condition is true, you have the code and then you write end while. And for the post condition you have the repeat and then you have the until. So very simple stuff. ये हम नहीं करेंगे, इसको मैं skip करूँगा. Output all the values from start till end inputted by the user. So you're going to ask the user to input a start and ending number. Then you run a loop from 1 to start to end. So ये आपका for loop में हो गया. अगर आपने यही प्रोसीजर while loop में करना है तो आपने start and input किया, and then you have to have some sort of a condition here. So while I is less than equal to end. So I को मैंने start के equal कर दिया because I don't want to change the value of start, so I'm just creating a copy of it. Again, totally depends how you guys want to do it. Okay, so I check the condition and then it runs the code and then I have to go to the next iteration. Okay, what happens if I forget to actually increment? So if I say x is equal to 10 while x is greater than 0, print x And then when I run it, so this is printing 10 infinite times. And I'm pretty sure you all know the reason. It is because we are not changing the value of x. So we have to increment it by 1 every time so that it eventually reaches some terminating value. So it's going to say while x is greater than, let's say, x is less than 10. Okay, so eventually when it reaches the condition, so it terminates. अगर आप इसको इंक्रीमेंट नहीं करोगे तो it will always remain the same value and then it will never end. So infinite loop हमें we have to avoid it at all cost. Then so while loop में आप condition initially check कर रहे हो and then repeat until में you are checking condition at the end, but it's kind of the same. So you start, then you do the repeat, you output the value, you go to the next iteration until I becomes greater than n. Pretty straightforward stuff. Okay, sum all the values inputted until -99. So इसको हम while से और repeat until से कर लेते हैं. In fact, I will write this on my own ताकि आपको एक दफा quickly recap हो जाए. कि while और repeat until में एक और difference ये है कि while में because the condition has to be checked in the start, so आपने condition को कोई ना कोई initial value assign करनी होती है उसमें जो भी terminating variable है. Okay, sum all the values inputted until -99, so declare sum as integer and हम value को भी as integer set कर देते हैं. Then I output enter number and I input that in the value. Yeah, input value ही कर लेते हैं जैसे भी आपको suit करे. Okay, now we have the value. So now we can run the loop. So while value is not equal to -99. So as long as that is not the case, तो ये आपका loop जो repeat होता रहेगा. So if I just try output enter number, what will be the issue? So the value will never change. And if I show you here, so I say while x is not equal to 10 and I print the value of x, so it will, since it's never changing, so it will again go into an infinite loop. And we don't want that. So what we'll do is I'll just ask for the user to input the value again. So first time they input, let's say they input 20. 20 is not equal to -99. So you output enter number again. So here we can just sum the value. So total is equal to, or sum is equal to sum plus value. Okay, I input the value. And then if I don't get the input again, it will keep on adding 20. And this will keep on happening infinite times. So I need to change the number and I will ask the user to input a new value and then they will keep on inputting until you hit the -99 number. So इसको अगर हम Python में करके देखें, so sum is equal to 0 and then int input. Again, please ignore Python syntax. This is not part of your syllabus yet. So while value is not equal to -99, you will just say sum plus equal to value, and then you will ask the user to input the value again, and you can actually see the value of sum changing every time. So I'll say 20. So the new sum should be 5. Okay, so it's 20. Or up next time, if I add 10, तो 25 हो गया, 90. So we're like one number behind. And then when I input -99, the loop ends instantly. So this is something that cannot happen in if conditions. And आपको पहले बता दें कि if conditions themselves will only run once. So अगर आपने कहीं पे भी कोई, so जहाँ पे भी आपको कोई word नजर आएगा ना validation का, या कि आपने make sure करने के numbers unique है etc. तो you have to assume automatically कि आपने loop लगाना even if it is not specified. So same logic for repeat until, but in repeat until we don't have to take input initially because we are checking the condition at the end. But इसमें अब एक catch थोड़ा सा होगा, वो ये है कि we don't want to add -99 into our sum, right? So when we do repeat until, we ask the user to input the value. और अगर मैं direct यहाँ पे -99 end पे लिख देता हूँ बस. So now what will happen is when I input -99 at this point, it will simply end up adding it into my total, which is clearly wrong. So what I need to do is I need to add an extra if condition, an additional precautionary measure. And here I'll check as long as number is not equal to -99, only then add them into the total. And then once the condition hits to -99, I will end the loop and then I can output the total. Quite a basic question. थोड़ा सा इसमें difference है क्योंकि now you have to use a conditional loop here. You will ask the user to input the original password, then you will ask them to input the confirmation password, and you have to keep asking them to repeat the confirmation password until it matches the original. And once they do, you have to output how many tries they took in this format. So logged in after should be, let's say 3 tries, so 3 यहाँ पे आ जाए. और अगर इसको एक दफा वो कर लें, trace कर लें. So let's say the original password is B99, Brooklyn 99. There's no confirmation में if you write Brooklyn like this, तो ये आपकी एक try हो जाएगी, and you don't have to output anything. Then you're not going to change the original password. Okay, आप इसी confirmation मांगे. So then I put BB99. So then it says कि बाकी ये second try है. Then maybe I input Brooke, the third try, and finally if I input B99, so now it should output logged in after 3 tries. So you can clearly see this cannot be done using a for loop because you have no guarantee when and at what point will the user input the exact confirmation password as the original one. So यहाँ पे या तो repeat until आएगा या while आएगा, and that's all for today.